So long as like Alchemy.
All right, here we go, y'all. Warriors Rockets. Is this for the NBA Finals? Let's not get ahead of ourselves. And I'm sure by now most of you have heard a ton of predictions and read a ton of preview pieces and stuff. Well, here's your boys. And I know why y'all come here, because I bring up some stuff that probably isn't talked about in mainstream media. And I hope that you can see how much I love the game and the attention to detail I pay to some of these things. So first thing, and the first advantage for one of these teams is something that, is kind of obvious. Home court advantage, right? The Houston Rockets have home court advantage. Now, this home court advantage is not really such like you would see for the Warriors at Oracle Arena or the Jazz in Utah, Boston and right at home. And those some of these teams, Denver with their elevation, where their crowd can be very loud, very intimidating, and then the travel, the destination of the city can apply to that factor as well. In Houston, I mean, they got an abundance of big ass titties in their crowd, right? They got some big old asses and titties, but beyond that, they're not very loud. They show up kind of late, right? And Houston fans, before you jump down my throat about this, the Rockets have a great fan base. I'm not dissing your fan base. It's one of the best fan bases in the league. But what I'm saying is the majority of people that attend the Rockets games, they're kind of casuals. They don't get too loud, and they've just never had a home court. Hey, that didn't stop them in 93 and 94, right? Talent ultimately will win out. But this home court advantage is maybe not as strong as it appears, right? It will help their young player, Clint Capella in particular, right? The cliche of the role players playing better, Gerald Green in particular, that's his hometown. He always seems to play better there. Ryan Anderson, not much the case, but who knows if he'll even be in the rotation. But there's also a psychological factor that I think may benefit Golden State. This is the first series since, 2014, since they haven't had home court advantage. And there's a little bit of added pressure in those first two games for the home team because you don't want to give up home court, right? If you lose one of the first two, then the series has been flipped. And I think Golden State really is going to enjoy chasing rather than being chased in these first two games because it's an unfamiliar role in the last few seasons, but we know they thrived on it early on in this dynasty. So home court advantage definitely is Houston's for their young players. But a guy like Chris Paul, James Harden, it shouldn't really matter. The veterans, the stars, they should perform regardless of where they're playing. Now, second, defense. And I know a lot has been publicized about the Rockets' better defense. Luke Mahamute, I'm going to butcher it about 10 times through the series, right? PJ Tucker, Trevor Ariza. Those are their three key defenders. Chris Paul, he's very smart and his effort level is there, but let's face it, he's on the wrong side of 30. He's not 6 feet tall. He's not long. There's a lot of physical limitations that go along with Chris Paul at this point in his career. I'm not putting him as a plus defender. But what about Clint Capella? I say 3+ defenders, but Clint really is the fourth. And I would make the argument he is the best shot blocker, rim protector in this series. Now you say Draymond Green is the defensive player of the year, and he's had huge block games in these playoffs. But Clint's presence in the paint, I think, alters more shots. And I've been really impressed with his ability to switch out on the perimeter and guard small guards much better than I ever imagined he could. So look for that to be a key for them defensively. Can Capella stay on the floor during crunch time? But overall, team-wise, you have to give the advantage in the defense to Golden State. And you can just simply do the eye test, right? When you turn on a game for Golden State and they're locked in defensively, it looks different than when Houston is playing defense. Again, it's more of an individual effort. When Golden State is locked in and they're rotating, protecting the rim, communicating and switching, it's just a different beast. But if you want to take it to individual players, Golden State just has more defenders, right? They simply do. So I think Golden State gets the edge with defense. Now, this is a controversial one and some may not agree with me, but the next advantage is depth, and that goes to the Houston Rockets. And, in the past, this strength in numbers mantra for Golden State, it just hasn't been that this year, right? And Warrior fans, you know what I'm talking about. The disappointment in Saggy P, right? And then injuries to Patrick McCaw, Sean Livingston probably not looking like we expected him to. Thank God for Andre Iguodala and his bamboozling of myself included, right? Just kind of coasting through the season. But if you look at Golden State, you've got Kevon Looney, right? Sean Livingston, and then Andre Iguodala. Do you count him as depth when considering if we're going to roll out the death lineup the rest of the playoffs? Presumably, he's no longer part of the depth. He's a starter. So that hurts the depth as well. David West was kind of out of the rotation in that Pelicans series, right? Now, there are possibilities. We've seen times where JaVale McGee has given Golden State, some action. They've continued to try to let Nick Young have some playing time. Will Quinn Cook step up? But depth goes to Houston because Gerald Green has been very consistent. Gunner, right? Eric Gordon, who struggled in the playoffs, but he's still a guy that you can expect to score well. Nene in and out of the lineup. Will we see ISO Joe and then Maamute? So I give the edge in depth to the Houston Rockets in this series, believe it or not. Now, this one, I'm going back and forth here, you can see, is system. And this is where Golden State shines, right? This is an inarguable topic to me. ISO ball from the Houston Rockets, and it's been, that in part has what's made their defense look better. Playing at a slower pace, D'Antoni kind of like flipped the script, right? It was because when he was in 7 seconds or less, it was kind of like, oh, well, the pace of the game, it's not that our defense is bad, it's just the amount of shots that are getting put up, right? Well, they've slowed it down, so it's kind of helped their defensive numbers. And they're playing to their strengths, so that's a credit to them. But the ISO offense, it does some things that helps Golden State defensively. One, it lets the guys off the ball rest. It's not, you know what I'm saying? It lets them save their legs and they can load up on the guy trying to score, right? So there's just some things that if it's not working, it could get very ugly, where if you look at the Golden State system, if you look at the motion offense and the split cuts, when things aren't falling, they can go back to that. A system is in place for a team to fall back on when things aren't going well. And so you have to give, because is Houston really at this point a system? It's more of a methodology. It's a philosophy in basketball. It's not really a system. And so the system, the clear advantage goes to Golden State. This leads me to, I think, Houston's greatest advantage, hunger, right? And this is undisputable. And you look at James Harden, you look at Chris Paul, and it's starting to weigh on their legacies, Chris Paul in particular, right? This is his first Western Conference Finals. And so Golden State can say all they want. Oh, we're ready. We're going to bring it. We're going to match this. But that's the key, right? They're going to match it. They know there's not a lot of talk of, oh, we're hungrier. We want it more. Even Golden State will acknowledge that. They're not saying that. They just know they have to match Houston's hunger. So without a question, when, the little things, the little extra hustle plays, the extra juice when you're tired, you're going to have to favor Houston in this situation because, again, hunger cannot be simulated. And Houston is clearly, they've showed all season long the hungrier team. Now, have they paced themselves well enough? In part, that's why they play at that slow pace. But this is not a rule, but usually you will see this. The hungrier team is almost always the less experienced team. And that's where Golden State has the advantage in experience, right? And so Golden State, we know who the Hampton Five are, and we know how they react under adverse times. If things go wrong, they blow a game late, we know who these guys are and we know what they're going to do. With Houston, that's just simply not the case. As good as Harden and Paul have been, let's say Chris Paul dribbles the ball out and they blow game 2 in Houston. Do they continue to trust what they've been doing all season in game 3? We just don't know the answers to that. What does Clint Capella look like at the free throw line late in a game to close out? We don't know the answers to that. And with Golden State, again, we know who they are and we know how they rise to the occasion under adverse situations. So you have to give Golden State the experience. Hey, y'all need to go get that Boom Called It, man. Oh, it's really like gambling without risk. And what you're doing is you're picking live games, and as long as you're picking winners, your points are ranking up. Now, the top 20 each week get a cash payout. But there's a special competition going on right now. The first person to 1,000 points in a week, that's $1,000 cash in your pocket. Now, matchup-wise, I'm not going to go too much into who's guarding who and what that's going to be because both teams, we all know the switchability. There's going to be so many switches throughout this series. It really doesn't matter who starts on who, but it's really going to be who finishes on who and what kind of schemes that is. Now, the first thing I want to talk about is, and everybody knows, Houston is going to attack Steph Curry relentlessly, and he can say he's ready for it all he wants. We know that he's limited, especially coming off the knee. I challenge Steph Curry right now to be more aggressive and be willing to expend more energy on the defensive end than you are on the offensive end. That's a mindset. Hoopers understand what I'm saying. If you're a ball player or you played hoops, you understand. There's the guys that are willing to spend more energy on defense, and there's the guys that just save it for the offensive side. And we've got a couple of those in this series, right? And Steph saves it for the offensive side, in part because he's better at offense. So I'm not knocking him. I'm not blaming him. But if you look at this series and you look at how they're going to attack, if Steph Curry can go into it with the mindset that, hey, I'm willing to use all my juice on the defensive end, my guys, and trust that the rest of the Hall of Famers on his team can carry them offensively, I think that that would be a huge move in his career and in this series. But my key matchup, I racked my brain. And again, those of you watching this, you know where my allegiance lies, but I try to do this objectively. I racked my brain. And I think the key matchup and the key thing that Golden State can do in this series is you put KD on James Harden. And why you do that is, one, because of his length and his ability to challenge, right? You can't put a smaller guy on Harden. Go check my Harden rules. You just can't do it, okay? But you put KD on Harden. But one of the main reasons you do that is it's a big on big switch. Draymond Green is on Clint Capella, right? We know that's going to be the case down the stretch if Clint's in the game. So when Clint comes to run that high pick and roll and they switch, all of a sudden you have Durant on Capella and Draymond on Harden. I like Golden State's chances with that, especially Harden trying to throw that lob over Kevin Durant, not as easy or as normal as you see with other switches and matchups. So I think that that's a key thing that Kerr can do is to put KD on Harden. Now, my X factors in the series are Andre Iguodala and Eric Gordon. Now, Eric Gordon has kind of struggled in these playoffs. He hasn't given them what they thought they would. But if Golden State fans know, traditionally he's a warrior killer. He's very strong, much better at finishing at the rim than you would expect for his stature, right? But he's much more athletic than you may think. It's just the question, is the three ball going to go down? And his confidence seems to waver. So I think that is, like, if they can get 20 plus points from Eric Gordon in this series, Houston has a great chance of upsetting Golden State, right? Andre Iguodala, Warrior fans, we've been talking about this all year. I pretty much announced his death midway through the season, right? And he's come back and he's looked really good, and he's been shooting the three ball at, I think, almost like a 40% clip. But the key is shoot the three ball, Andre. He's got to shoot. He's got to remain aggressive. But there's a key aspect of that I want to ask from Andre Iguodala in this series, because we talk about Clint Capella and who is Golden State going to throw at Clint Capella? How are they going to stop his size and athleticism around the rim, right? And my answer to that question is you don't stop him, you take him out. And you take him out by foul trouble. He is susceptible to fouls, being a shot blocker, being a young shot blocker, right? And that is a team concept. Everybody has to look to attack him and go to the basket. But Andre Iguodala is the guy I circle in particular, because he's the guy that you're going to see with space to go to the rim. He always has those opportunities, and a lot of the times you see him make the extra pass or just kind of be tentative. We need to see him rise up into Clint Capella, find his body with two hands, and go up and draw the foul. Now, it's not about making free throws. It's about getting fouls on Clint Capella and taking him out of this series. So that, to me, is why Andre Iguodala is the X factor. Now, here are some principal rules for Golden State as far as some of the matchups go. With PJ Tucker and Trevor Ariza, you must sell out on the corner three ball, right? If you've seen the percentages, both of them shoot a much greater percentage from the three-point line in the corner. So when you have to close out on them, fully commit, run and sell out and run them off the line, make them put it down and make a play towards the basket. If it's above the breaks and at the top of the key, then you can close out a little more modestly and perhaps dare them to shoot that ball. Gerald Green, a momentum player. He's kind of what Nick Young was supposed to be, and he plays very much so off momentum. So it's important that you find him in transition. He will pull up from any and anywhere at any speed in transition. Find him in transition. And then, like I had mentioned before, attack Clint Capella and attack his body. It sometimes he'll get the block, that's fine, but you have to attack him and get him in foul trouble. Now for Houston, it's all about transition. They cannot allow Golden State to get out in transition. If the game is getting played fast and Golden State, because that's where their defense really hurts. Their team defense isn't as strong when the pace is fast. That's why they play slow. So they need to control the pace. We know they're going to get to the line and draw fouls, but they have to keep the game slow. Y'all are like, damn, Al, get to the prediction. Get to the prediction. We 15, 20 minutes into this bitch. I'm getting to it. All right, so you saw my last preview. 7 games, I overestimated the Pelicans, right? And to take a glimpse into my psychology on that is when I break these matchups down, I know in my core that I'm viewing it through the lens of a Warriors fan. There's no way to be objective. And to try to balance that out, sometimes I lean towards a modest prediction. It's like, well, are they really going to kill him? Or is that the fan in me speaking, right? But ultimately, I want to give you guys what I feel in my gut. And that is the Houston Rockets made one huge mistake in this past season. They really did. Everything's gone right and everything looks good heading into this matchup. But they made one huge mistake. They let the Warriors know they were coming, right? When talking about being obsessed, designed to beat the Warriors. Clint Capella said, hell, we're better than the Warriors, right? Now, Golden State has said all the right things. Oh, it doesn't matter who's in front of us. We're about rings, right? But again, we know who the Warriors are. We know who Draymond is. We know who Steph is, right? And if you recall, in the beginning of this dynasty run, how well they did relishing in the role of being the underdog and being the disrespected team. And along the road, they've lost that. Now, 2-time champions, adding Kevin Durant to the mix, all of a sudden they were the hunted. And now Houston has allowed them to become the hunter again. And that was a grave mistake, man. What's the saying? Be careful what you ask for, you might just get it. Well, Houston, you asked for it. You're going to get it in 6. Hit that like, share, and subscribe. I'm out, y'all.